going on YouTube? American Prepper here, and today's video I'm going to be talking about my best places to live when SHTF, my personal choices. Now these aren't guaranteed and these aren't for sure for everybody, but these are just my opinion and these are the things I'm considering when picking a location. Crime, gun laws, land prices, climate, natural resources, and population density. So let's get right into it. This isn't in any sort of order, not from greatest to least, or number one, number two, or whatever, but let's start off with number one is Mississippi. It has the Mississippi River and a plethora of natural resources. Mississippi's violent crime rate increased year over year from 2.6 reported per 1,000 residents to 2.9. The population is about 3 million people. Something I've always noticed about this state is it has a large portion of the Mississippi River running through it. This adds a huge edge to survival over other states, as this unlocks a huge amount of natural resources and acts as a guide in terms of mapping. It's also prepper friendly with land regulations, relaxed gun laws, and an average climate. The state's relaxed gun laws. You should also note that the crime rate is moderate, although it's not too concerning in the outskirts of town. Land prices are average, and as far as the climate is concerned, expect hot and humid summers with damp and cool winters. The land regulations are very friendly to those who would benefit us as preppers. Great culture for preppers, as I have said before. This means if you have an itch to build a bunker or a disaster shelter, you won't be required to jump through 100 hoops to do so. Also, the culture for the government citizen freedom is uniquely present, which helps feed the already existing culture for a good old American freedom. Overall, it's an okay option for considering all things. Next would be Colorado. Population is 5.759 million. Colorado's violent crime rate is 423 crimes per 100,000 people in 2020. It was the 20th highest in the United States. Alaska's, which I will be going over later, is the highest crime rate in the nation. I should also mention the abundance of vegetation that is suited for food. The climate is nearly average, though you'll find the winters do drop a mild amount of snow. This has changed in recent years, but they're somewhat lenient towards gun owners and lack of harsh land regulations. The state government of Colorado is actually pretty lenient towards gun owners, not as much as some, and gives a very conservative approach in regards to land regulations. It's certainly low in population density, which is again a very important factor to consider. As mentioned before, overpopulation could wreak havoc after SHTF, such as New York City, Chicago, etc. The Rocky Mountains. When I'm looking for a state to benefit my needs, I always make sure I evaluate the benefits I gain over other states. Rocky Mountains is a great benefit. Known for its beautiful mountains, Colorado would provide an exceptional place to settle down and provide most things that are needed to sustain life during SHTF. Plenty of wildlife and many natural resources. It has natural resources available in every corner of the land, including tons of water throughout the state, although they are prone to wildfires and it has been drier in the recent years. Plenty of sustainable wildlife and a large array of mountains for shelter. Montana. A little over 1 million population. In 2022, the Montana crime rates experienced a sharp rise in violent crimes compared to the last year, with violent crime rates jumping from 4.2 per 1,000 people to 4.7. In contrast, the property crime rate saw a slight drop from 22.4 per 1,000 to 21.2. This is still higher than the national average of 19.6. It has an abundance of natural resources and it's under the radar. The state often runs under the radar, likely because it doesn't have many large cities within the state and lacks highly populated states surrounding it. This is great because that simply means we get to take advantage of all the natural resources that are available for ourselves. Tons of wildlife and great terrain. The state has a slew of large mountains as mentioned before. They provide some of the best natural protection available for fallout. In addition, it's also packed full of rivers and creeks. The wildlife is definitely in abundance too, with antelope, deer, and elk scattered throughout. Next would be Ohio. 11.69 million. Lots of Amish, plenty of natural resources, and cheap land. Something that I thought was neat about this state is the fact that more Amish communities reside here than any other state, which leads me to believe there must be some reason for this. If you look into the land of Ohio itself, you'll notice a plethora of cheap land available, even in today's housing market. You just have to move a little bit outside the city. The land is also has adequate amount of natural resources available, while also being extremely easy to navigate. It has a cooler climate, but manageable. It's definitely not something that would lead to devastation if you're not skilled in these types of conditions. It has some snow in winter months, but it's certainly something to take into consideration. Alaska, population 731,545. The state will be an unlikely target. However, it has the highest crime rate in the nation for violent crime, with about 867 incidents per 100,000 people. It's more the fact that it's more away from important targets from other nations, which are thought to be cities near Washington, New York, California, to name a few. It's far away from pretty much everything. This alone makes the chances of truly devastating disaster happening to drop significantly. Tons of natural resources, fantastic terrain, and great gun laws. As for the natural resources, it's simply king in this aspect. However, it gets very cold in the winter, and it can be very brutal if you're not used to that. Next one would be Wyoming. Population 578,759. I chose this would be the best in my opinion, just because this is where I would want to live someday. The gun laws, population density, and the price of land. 2022 Wyoming crime rates. Wyoming violent crime went up this year from 2.1 incidents per 1,000 people to 2.3. This is up 9% from last year, and property crime also rose this year, moving up from 15.7 incidents per 1,000 people to a 16.3 incidents per 1,000 people. The last one I'm going to list is New Hampshire. Population 1.36 million. In New Hampshire, 42% of residents are concerned for their safety daily, which isn't far from the national average of 47%. Despite this near average level of concern, people in New Hampshire reported fewer personal experiences with crimes than in previous years. The Granite State has some of the lowest crime rates in the country's rates that continue to decline. Some of the safest cities come in well below the state average for violent crime and property crime. It's a decent place to live, but it's surrounded by a lot of other states, so that's something else to consider. Although land prices are pretty high because it's pretty a small state in general, but it's not a bad option. So these are just some examples, some ideas that if you want to look more into. I did some further research into these, but if you want to consider maybe moving to a more prepper-friendly state, also consider the politics, whatever political view you lean more towards. Consider the politics, consider the gun laws, the climate, the land prices, the crime, the natural resources, and the population density. These are very important factors to consider if you decide on moving to a place before you make the jump. Thanks for watching.